This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. Are Browns practices getting too physical? Well, Todd Monken certainly thought that was the case this last practice because he ended it early because of extra physicality that was going on. But there was a lot more that happened at practice. Obviously, we'll get to how practice ended at the end of the video. But Browns had practice. This is their padded practice before they get into joint practice with the Buffalo Bills, which will be padded as well. And, you know, when you talk about physicality, usually it ramps up at this point of camp, right? You've been hitting against the same guys for about a month. You're starting to get tired of everybody. You know, coaches are bumping heads. Players are bumping heads. Everybody's trying to get ready for the season. You have a big test in joint practice versus the Buffalo Bills, who are a legitimate contending team. So you want to make sure you're up to snuff. So naturally, you're going to have more physicality breakout in a joint practice, and you're going to have some physicality breakout in the lead up to a joint practice. So none of this is too unexpected. I'm sure Todd Monken will tell us this when he hits the press conference today, that it's not something that's unexpected, but it's something that does happen. You do have to manage it. And this is where the Browns are right now in their lead up to start the season. There were other things that Todd Monken talked about, though. He talked about the development of the offensive line. We'll throw to that clip.
The most out of it is the rookies. You know, I think we've seen a lot of development and taking steps forward from Austin Barber and Spencer. The guys that you would expect that to occur. You know, obviously between Elton, Zion, and Titus, you expect them to play well. I would say have. So it's just been hard because we all been, and most teams go through this, haven't had them all in there at one time. But that's part of camp.
Yeah, that has been an issue for the Cleveland Browns. They haven't had their 5 starters on the offensive line healthy. I think you kind of saw that and why the run game looked as clunky as it looked. You got guys playing positions for the first time. You have certain guys out of position. Maybe you practiced this play at right tackle, but now you're in at left. All kind of funky stuff going on as the Browns try to conjure up this offensive line. And they try to conjure up some health there. As far as talking about the development of the youth on the offensive line, right, we're going to talk about Austin Barber. We're going to talk about Spencer Fano, how they look like in preseason week 1, in a breakdown that should release around noon today. So make sure you stay locked in on that. There was another clip from him talking about the defensive backs. I've been talking about this, how I've been pleasantly surprised from the play from the guys who aren't Denzel, who aren't Tyson Campbell. It was one of my biggest concerns coming into camp. And as this camp is going on, I've been less concerned about the position in total.
Been banged up there. Losing Terrence, you know, D. Ross has been out. And I know I'm missing some guys that have been out. Miles has been out, Bryant. So we've been banged up there. So it's been fun watching Michael Coates play. I mean, that's guy who just shows up every day and makes plays. So that's probably the one that stood out with the other guys beat up at corner.
Michael Coates has been standing out. You know, we've been talking about this preseason. We need somebody to step up. So if Michael Coates could be that extra corner that steps up for this team, who knows? Maybe he can step up, play slot, you know, during the season, because that's been a question mark for this team for a little bit too much time. There is a depth chart that was released. Nothing really interesting here, hence why this is being pushed into a video about practice and not its own video. Nothing really new here, right? Jerry Jeudy, Spencer Fano, Zion Johnson, Elgin Jenkins, Tevin Jenkins, Titus Howard at the offensive line. Wide receivers are Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion with Jerry Jeudy. That's no surprise. They're still doing the Watson or Shedeur Sanders thing at QB1, Dylan Gabriel at QB3, Taylor Green at QB4, Quincy Judkins. Nothing really surprising there. Nothing's really changed here at tight end either. Blake Whiteheart, Jake Stoll. All right, so the one interesting note here at tight end, Joe Royer is no longer listed on the roster. He is still on the team. He hasn't been officially released yet, but he is not here on the depth chart, right? Carson Ryan has moved up above Jermaine Terry and Daquan Wright. But no Joe Royer here as we wait to find out a conclusion for his situation. The defensive stuff, Jared Verse, Julian Okora, Malik Collins, Mike Hall, Mason Graham, Kalia Davis, Alex Wright, Isaiah McGuire, nothing really surprising there. I think the Browns are looking for another edge to replace Julian on this list. I think they're not super happy with the edge play there. Carson Schlesinger, Quincy Williams, Ethan Masker Arnold, nothing really changing there. Tyson Campbell, Denzel Ward, Miles Harden, D'Angelo Ross. We got Michael Coates here as on the fourth string, but he has been making noise and made Todd Monken notice him. Also, keep in mind Miles Harden is starting nickel corner, so this is technically second. That's technically third string. Safety, no change. Kicker, no change. Punt returner, Gage Larvin is listed as the starter for punt returner. Malachi Corley is listed as the starting kick returner. I do wonder if that changes to BKC Concepcion during the season or if they just use him situationally. But yeah, the depth chart, nothing really interesting has changed there as far as injuries go. Mike Hall has returned to practice. Alex Wright is back too. Not practicing today. Joe Royer, Cedric Tillman, Michael Burton, Carson Schlesinger for like the 10th time, Parker Brailsford for like the 9th time, Titus Howard, Elgin Jenkins, the starting right tackle and center, Daquan Wright, Jack Stowe, Sam Kamara, Kalea Davis, Malik Collins. So again, the same concerns I've had with the injuries, right? Carson Schlesinger, you think that he's going to get back and be fine. I'm really happy to see that Mike Hall is back because he does need the training camp. And Alex Wright is also somebody you want to see get back out there. And look, it's a good thing the first preseason week has gone by and you haven't had any major injuries. That's awesome. But Titus Howard, Elgin Jenkins, they've been kind of on and off the list, and they're the two vets there, so like you're not as worried about it, right? That right side of the line is more of a veteran side of the line, so if there's one side that's going to be out, I guess you could deal with that, but really want to see all 5 of these guys get some chemistry playing with each other because it just hasn't been what the health situation just hasn't been what I think they wanted it to be. We're going to continue to talk about what happened at yesterday's practice, but first I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 sports app. The app is really easy to use for player picks. Just pick more or less for a few player stats and lock in your lineup. That's it. Rather just pick teams. Well, PrizePicks has that now too. Just pick the winner, spread, or total in any game or fight. PrizePicks is available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida. Plus, you can even follow me on the app at Quinn_C and tell my picks with one click and follow your friends too. Speaking of my picks, here they are. Myles Garrett over 15.75 sacks. 16's been his baseline the last few years. I'd be very surprised if he goes to LA and that number drops, given that he's going to see more passing attempts, given that LA's offense is better than what the Browns have been. Quinshon Judkins, 924 yards. They had 2 really good picks for Quinshon here, 6 touchdowns or 924 yards. I feel comfortable taking more on both, but 1,000 yards feels like a safer bet for Quinshon. I think he's going to have a big year this year. Carson Schlesinger, 2.25 sacks. I'm saying more. Remember, Mike Rutenberg likes to blitz his linebackers a lot more than the previous defensive coordinator the Cleveland Browns had. Also, Carson Schlesinger is probably going to have to get involved as a sack producer to make up for the hole that they're going to have to make up for Myles Garrett. And then Shedeur Sanders starting more than 7.5 games. I think he'll be the starter, play about 8 games or more this year, but that's my picks for this season. Best of all, play your first $5 and get $150 in lineups if you win. Just use the promo code HMA when you sign up. Again, that's your first $5 and get $150 in lineups if you win when you use the promo code HMA. PrizePicks has switched up their offer. There's no better time to join, lock in, and win that first lineup. All right, so we talked about Mike Hall being back at practice, but he's also back at practice with the bang, getting in the backfield here. Boom, that looks like a TFL on Dylan Sampson. So Nice to see Mike Hall make plays here. They're going to need some defensive tackles to make some plays here. We're going to need every single pressure and sack we can get. Another defensive highlight from Denzel Ward here on a pass breakup to a throw from Watson to Denzel Boston. Watson steps up here, airs this thing out, and Denzel Ward does a great job of getting on top of this, right? Denzel Ward has that elite speed, so it's not like Denzel Boston's going to have an easy time breaking over it. And good job by Ward to track the ball and almost haul in an interception. I know by Denzel Ward's standards, he feels like he should have had that. So great pass breakup there by Denzel Ward. You want to see Denzel Ward be healthy and look like Denzel Ward. I know there's been some doubt because like the statistics for Ward aren't the best from last year, but just watching the tape on him, he looks really good. And I think that's going to continue. I think he's the one player, that's most likely to benefit from Miles not being here, right? Statistically, at least. I think he had a really easy job when Miles was here because he didn't really have to think too much. You were allowed to be aggressive. That you knew the ball was going to come out quick. Now he's going to get tested more, which means he's going to be able to get the opportunity to rack up more statistics. Isaiah McGuire was injured during practice. He was seen walking to the locker room. Not a good sign. It's been a rather banged up camp. None of the big names have really been on the injury report outside of like Carson Schlesinger. So that's the good news, but really have had a lot of guys beat up this camp. And it's kind of reflective in the consequence of having a more physical offseason period and following that up with what hopes to be a physical practice period, right? If you want to kick it old school, well, you're going to end up with some guys on the injury list. And that's something that you're willing to take because you think it's going to make you a little bit more resilient during the year. We'll see if that pays off. Obviously injuries are just hard to judge. It's hard to pinpoint a reason for a lot of guys getting injured too in a camp. Sometimes it's because of something you're doing. Sometimes it has nothing to do with what you're doing, right? Like injury is just one of those things where the cause can be random a lot of the times and sometimes unavoidable no matter what technique or tactic you could do. There's not really a lot of proven ways to stop injuries from happening other than just like not playing football entirely. But then during the season, when you have to play football, you're going to run into injuries. So there's something that's going to pop up there. Denzel Ward had a really good practice. Nice play here, ripping Isaiah Bond on a throw from Deshaun Watson. Bond comes down with this, but you see Denzel Ward fight through, physical. This is the good Denzel Ward that we know that he's been for quite some time now. Nice to see him kind of assert his dominance here. I was hearing that Jared Verse was very, very dominant in this practice, very physical. Really probably why practice ended early, but we'll get to that later. But he was really trying to get these guys to have more bite here. Shedeur Sanders to Gage Larvin. This is a pretty throw from Shedeur, right? We know that Shedeur has this, a real pretty deep ball. Got it over the shoulder of Gage Larvin. And the big question with Shedeur, and we'll talk about this in the film breakdown, isn't whether he's capable of making pretty throws every once in a while. It's more about can he do some of the meat and potato stuff that you need to actually move an offense up and down the field on a consistent basis, which that's proven tougher for Shedeur. Deshaun Watson had a throw to Isaiah Bond here, a little play action, heavy pocket. You can see practice getting physical. Look at this mob of guys near the quarterback here. Usually it's a big no-no. Like now you don't want to have a mob near your quarterback because guys can fall, things could happen. Obviously the Browns aren't in a situation where they need to protect their quarterback too much because none of our quarterbacks are franchise caliber at this point. But, I think there was a clip from Mike McDonald where like this kind of stuff was happening and he had to cuss out one of his defensive ends because he's like, hey, this is not what we're trying to do right now, right? So nice little deep ball from Watson to Isaiah Bond, heavy pressure there. Casey Concepcion continues to impress. He's been so impressive since camp has started. Nice little sell route. You can see he just makes that man fall right there. That's a nasty word right there. A little hiss up. Psst, psst. And look, we saw this with Jerry Jeudy in the Deshaun Watson breakdown where we were looking at one of Jerry Judy's reps. Jerry Jeudy made somebody fall like that. Now we're seeing Casey Concepcion. You know, we saw what Denzel Boston was doing at the top of his route. We got 3 guys who can make DBs look foolish on this team. And that's good. It's way more guys than we had last year, and that's just talking about the wide receivers. We haven't even talked about Harold Fannin, who, if he would have caught that 3rd and 5, would have also been on that list because he had a great route going up to it. So, you know, the Browns, wide receivers, tight ends, pass catchers, look, they're gonna embarrass some DBs and create some easy throws for quarterbacks, hopefully, during the season. And hopefully our quarterbacks can execute on that, right? But nice little sail here. Look at that. Sinks the hips, boom, pops open. Just great. Put him on skates. And then you know he's dangerous with the ball in his hands. So great to see from Casey Concepcion. We have this report here from Daniel Fuise. Practice is over. It was an abrupt ending that Todd Monken called as he addressed the team. He seemed frustrated with some of the over physicality from the defense. During the move the ball session, a defensive lineman made contact with Shador's arm and was set to the sideline. Same thing happened after Aiden Huntington knocked Quincy Judkins to the ground on a run play. Practice was called not too long after. Yeah, it makes sense that, you know, what set this off. And it kind of gives you a hint at what the Browns are going to be, or at least try to be on offense this year. You notice that, like, you know, somebody hit the quarterback, and that just sent somebody to the sideline. Somebody took Quincy to the ground. That's it. We're done. That's the money, right? That's what they're hoping is the money on this offense, right? They're betting a lot on Quincy Judkins being able to run the ball. He's coming back from an injury. You tackle him to the ground. Like, you can't have that kind of shit go down in a practice, right? Especially when that's the most important player on the offense. I mean, you're probably giving that guy the ball 300 times this year, right? So yeah, can't touch the money like that, right? It's a little bit different with the Browns because, like, we don't have a franchise quarterback, so, like, you know, the quarterbacks can be touched a little bit, I guess. Sometimes some coaches are still just going to keep that as a mindset for the team to have, but, you know, okay, you can touch the quarterback, but, like, get off the field. But you start touching the guys that are super important to this team, you know, they're going to be more protective. Another thing to look at is, like, hey, who are the Browns really protective over in the preseason, right? Obviously, they're going to let their young players play a bit. So we saw all the rookies out there, but, like, Mason Graham, Jared Verse, right? The guys who are, like, super important in this defense, Quincy Williams, they played like 3 plays on defense, you know. The offensive line outside of Spencer Fano, the starting offensive line at least, played 1 drive, right? And then it was backups after that. You know, they're kind of like letting you know, like, okay, these are the guys who we're really betting on this year because they really can't get hurt during the preseason. It's one of those things to always peep. We got video of whatever set this whole thing off. This is Shador, somebody running into Shador after the practice, right? Okay, play here. I think that's right. That runs into him. Can't make that mistake. And then I don't think we got the full clip here, but Aiden Huntington basically tackling Quincy Judkins. Can't happen. Monken was yelling at the defensive coaches too. There was still time on the clock, so we're assuming practice was cut short. Yeah, I mean, again, this point of camp, it usually gets a little bit more testy towards the coaches, towards the players. Guys are ready to get the season going. It's been about a month. It's hot. This happens. You know what I mean? I didn't really think it was a big deal the last time he ended practice early. He ends practice early this time. It is interesting, right? Because the last time he did end practice early, he seemed to feel like that was something he needed to apologize for. Like he lost his temper. I wonder if this is something that he felt like it's going to feel the same way again on, and if he lost his temper again here, because if that's the case, then, like, you know, the behavior's not really changing, you know, despite apologizing for it. So me personally, I don't have an issue with either of them. I don't think he had to apologize for either of it. But, you know, if he feels like that's something, then that's the bar that he set for himself to be judged. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he talks about that later today. But, yeah, a little bit of physicality, guys starting to fight. You kind of want it, like, you don't want your joint practice to just be a shit show where guys are just trying to fight the bills the whole time, because you can't get any work done, right? Like, the whole point of a joint practice is to get some work done. So I think Todd's just like trying to be cautious of that. Like, hey, we want these guys to be able to get work done. We want to be able to get work done. And if we're just fighting all the time, we're not going to get work done. We're not going to get better. And we really need this practice to get better, because, you know, the Browns don't know who they are right now. They don't know how good they're going to be, who's really good, who's not. They have to value pieces of information like a joint practice versus the Bills. So I get wanting to tone down the physicality before a joint practice. So I get where he's at on this. You know, you don't want your joint practices to just turn into work sessions. You know what I mean? But that's going to be it. That was practice yesterday. Wanted to do an update because the film breakdown for Watson kind of took the slot that was normally for the practice recap. Wanted to make sure I threw one in here so we can all stay up to date on what's been going on. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.